Hello, and welcome to Scheduling Tips and Tricks for School-Based Therapists. My name is Olivia. I am the face behind Noteworthy Resources. I hope this video will be helpful. I know scheduling at the beginning of the school year can be a complete headache for school-based therapists, and so I want to give you guys some tips and tricks to make it as seamless as possible. For a little bit of context, I personally love scheduling. It's one of my favorite parts of my job, and I always try to frame it in light of the fact that we are one of the only professions who is able to create our own schedule. So I know it can be stressful. I know it can be a lot at the beginning of the year when you're trying to sit down and figure out when to see students. But I also want you to keep in mind you have the power to control your own schedule. And I want you to take advantage of that. A lot of us, I feel like, go in with this mentality of this is something we have to do. This is something that's incredibly difficult to do. And it is difficult, but we miss the benefits. Some of us think, well, I don't have much control over when I can see kids. And we go in with this mentality that it's all negative. So I want you to try to change your perspective before you go in. Think about this as something that you get to do, a privilege of your job, and see how it kind of changes the way that you schedule. So for today, don't worry, I'm not showing you confidential information. I've used ChatGPT to give me a caseload of about 45 students, okay? So please keep in mind, I know that some of you have a much larger caseload than 45. I know some of you have a much smaller caseload than 45. I thought that would be a pretty average caseload size to start with. So this is something that you can contextualize on your own. But I have specific information for students. Like I said, this has been completely randomized in ChatGPT. So we have 45 students. We have information about their school, their frequency and duration of services, their birthday, age, grade, and then their case manager. And that's the information we're going to use today for scheduling. Just for context, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks within the streamline of me creating a fake schedule, so to speak. We'll talk about just different tips and tricks, and hopefully this will help you as you progress for creating your own schedule. I'm an occupational therapist. I find this works well with PT, speech, any kind of school-based therapy where you are creating your own schedule. So, first and foremost, why do we create a schedule? Why is it important for us to create a schedule and not just see kids at random times? I remember my first year, I wasn't sure because no one had ever taught me how to do this. I think most of us are probably in that boat. If it would be better for me to just try to go see kids spontaneously, randomly, or if it would be better to give them a specific time and follow a schedule every week. Quickly, I realized that for several reasons, schedules are beneficial. Number one, they're beneficial for us. They keep us on track. For me, I might put kids off or procrastinate seeing kids if I don't have a specific schedule that I'm following. It's also beneficial for teachers. If we're able to walk into the classroom and say, little Johnny comes to therapy on Tuesdays at 10:30 in the morning, that is going to help the teacher to file that away and understand that every Tuesday at 10:30, little Johnny is going to be gone for therapy. So that's something that's helpful as well. We usually get better teacher buy-in when we have a schedule. The third reason, and this also kind of goes without saying, but it benefits the students. They have the consistency of knowing when they're coming to therapy. I know a lot of us, if we're working in special education, we have students with autism, students who really value and crave a routine. And if we're coming at the same time every week or the same time every other week, we're able to help them to expect and anticipate the time that we're going to be showing up and the time that we're going to be working with them in therapy. So, without further ado, those are kind of the main reasons why it's important. Let's dig into the how. What you're looking at right now is my caseload manager sheet. Now, Everybody can do this their own way. This is available. I will put the link in the comments for anybody who's interested in this particular case load manager Google Sheets template. It's fully customizable. There are a lot of features about it that I love. I've kind of worked with it over the years to make it exactly what I want. But however you have this information and this data is fine. The main thing is we want to begin with the caseload manager. We want to have our caseload in front of us in some degree. We want all of this information to be readily accessible because when we're scheduling, we want to, one, make sure we don't leave anybody out. And two, we want to make sure we're putting them down for the correct time. So let's just give an example. Let's say Emily here, the first student on this sheet, is twice a week for 30 minutes. If I am not looking at my caseload sheet, I might forget and think that maybe she's only once a week. Well, if I only give her a once a week slot, that's going to get me in some big trouble because, as we know, working in school-based therapy, times are very important. And we have to meet these specific times that are outlined. So definitely organize yourself first. This is going to be key and crucial. It's easy to want to jump in, start scheduling, putting kids on the calendar. Before you do that, I want you to verify all of your students and all of their times, okay? Once you've done that, we're ready to go. So this is how I have organized it. I've got all my students, all 45 of them, on this caseload overview sheet with specific information. That's going to be number one. Tip number two, and I know this is going to sound probably hilarious if for those of you who grew up in the early 2000s and are familiar with the 7 habits, but I want you to begin with the end in mind. Scheduling is a bear. Scheduling is frustrating. It is difficult. There's a lot of trial and error involved in the process. But when you have all of this information in front of you, it can be very overwhelming and it can be very tempting to just do it as quickly as possible and get things on the schedule and jump in. I want to caution you from doing that. I want to challenge you instead of just jumping in and throwing kids on the schedule. I want you to think about the end goal, all right? So let's look at this second little sheet down here. This is also part of the caseload manager. They're both side-by-side tabs on my Google Sheets template. But I have a weekly schedule template on here. Very basic, very simple. Times go from 7 to 6. Hopefully that will include everybody in a school-based schedule. If not, you can always add or delete rows. But that's where we're going to begin. All right, we have this schedule, it's blank. What is my goal as a therapist? I want you to be selfish for a minute. I want you to start thinking about the things that you want in your optimal schedule, okay? Put all of the students aside, put everything else aside, and I want you to think, if I had my ideal schedule, aside from just being off, what would I want to happen? I'll give you some examples. Some of us are like, I would really like a low impact Friday. I want to ease into my weekend. I want to have a nice Friday where I either see only a few kids or I end at lunchtime. These are things that we can think. Some of us, it's like, I want a consistent lunchtime every day. I don't want to be eating at 11 on some days and 2:30 on other days and no lunch break. Some of us, it's like, you know what? I want, in a perfect world, to eat at 12 o'clock every single day. And I want to block off that time for lunch. Some of us are like, you know what? I would like to have, at the end of the school day, 30 minutes of documentation time. I don't want to treat any students from 2:30 to 3 o'clock, so I can have that time to finish up my notes, wind down, and leave. So as you prepare your schedule, begin with the end in mind. I want you to think about those things, the things that you want most, and I want you to go ahead and plug them in on your schedule. Now, listen, I know that you might not get all of those things. For me, let's see, I want Friday afternoons to be documentation time, billing time, etc., right? From 12:30 to 3, I want to have documentation time on Fridays. I want my lunch every day to be at 11:30 And I want to have an hour of prep time on Monday mornings when I walk in the door. I want to have time to get things out. I don't want to start seeing students. I want to be able to prep some interventions for an hour. All right. So here's what we've got. This is my shell, my basic shell of my schedule. And I know for some of you, you're thinking, there's going to be students I have to see during those times. I can't risk blocking off all of this time because there's going to be students I need to see during those times. Maybe there will be, maybe there won't be. I want you to do this to get these times on the schedule, and then we will adjust as needed. Okay. Once we've got this on here, we can adjust as needed. But if we don't block off all these times, then we're not going to know. Okay. Yes, maybe, we're down to the wire. There's 2 kids left to see, and the only times they're available are, 12:30 on Wednesdays and Fridays, and you already have a student at 12:30 on Wednesdays. Yeah, you might have to fill this time. But you can kind of contemplate that as you go when you've already put in the time that you prefer. So this could also be a time if you are seeing multiple different schools to go ahead and block off specific schools for specific days. So let's go back to my caseload because I've got 4 different schools that I'm going to be seeing. I've got Evergreen Elementary, Seaside Elementary, Valley View Middle School, and Grandview High School. These are the 3 schools. Now I'm going to go ahead and sort my sheet up here at the top. Click this 3rd column, which is column C, and sort sheet from A to Z. So that's going to show me how many students are in each school. So we've got Evergreen Elementary. We have, let's see, 16 students at Evergreen Elementary. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students at Grandview High School. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 students at Seaside. And we have 3, 6, 10, no, 8 students at Valley View Middle School. So that is the composition of my caseload. The reason I like this sheet specifically is because it helps me to kind of process that out. So I'm going to go ahead, since I don't have last names on here, just to remind myself, because I can be forgetful, how many students that I have at each school. So that's going to be important when I'm looking at composition of my caseload. I have the most students at my elementary schools. Most of you probably are in the same boat. I've got like 31 students out of my 45 students who are at elementary schools. We'll come back to that in a minute, go back to schedule. If we are looking at my week and I'm working all 5 days and I've got 30 kids to see, there is a pretty good chance that I'm going to need 2 to 3 days to really work at these schools, right? That's going to be in my best interest to do. So again, I'm going to go on here. Let's just say I want to work at Evergreen on Mondays. Let's do Seaside, I think it's the other elementary school. And then I'm going to split my time between Evergreen. No, let's just alternate. Let's do that. I think I've got enough time in my schedule. If I need to see 10 kids on Fridays. See, it's a lot of problem solving. It's a lot of back and forth. Like, do I want to do that? Well, I blocked off my Friday afternoon, so maybe I don't want to see all of those students on Fridays. Let's split my time on Wednesdays between Evergreen and Seaside. Yeah, I can spell this morning. Seaside. And then on Thursdays, let's do the middle school. I can't remember, Valley View, I believe. And then on Fridays, I'm going to go to Grandview High. So this is helpful as well before you start going. You can look at your caseload composition. I know how many students I have at each school, how many I need to be seeing, right, at each school. Got all that worked out. And now I can know where to start. I don't want to be hopping back and forth between schools. That's no fun. Occasionally, I will have to do that. Obviously, meetings and things like that, you all know. But if I can walk in the door and leave from the same school, that's going to be golden. Wednesdays, I might have to go, evergreen until lunchtime, leave at lunch and drive to Seaside and spend the afternoon at Seaside in order to make it work. But all in all, this is looking pretty good. Play with it, figure out what works best for you based on numbers, and then we'll get going. All right, so we've got my end goal in mind as a shell, and now we're going to move on to tip number 3, which is get master schedules as quickly as possible. I understand some teachers are very territorial over their master schedules. They don't want to give them up. They don't have them to give up. There's a lot of controversy around master schedules, but they tend to be very, very helpful, specifically when you're trying to avoid certain times. I know for me in the past, avoiding seeing kids during their specials times like art and PE, that's beneficial because a lot of times our students that are in more of a resource setting, those are the times they're with their peers. We're obviously going to want to avoid lunchtime. We're not going to take kids out of their lunch. Those are 2 things that are going to be available on a master schedule for you to see. You're going to realize when their lunch times are, when they are free, and when they are not free. Okay. So those 2 things are on master schedules. Other things to kind of look at, core content times are pretty much a no-no most of the time. ELA, math time, those are, tested subject areas we a lot of times don't want to overlap with. Speech therapy, I'm OT, so, we don't want to overlap therapies. If they're already getting pulled out for a specific time, we can't pull them out at the same time. Any kind of resource time, sped minutes, that's kind of thing we don't want to overlap with if we can help. So there's a lot of things we don't want to overlap with. The sooner you are going to get their schedules, the easier it's going to be for you to figure out when they're available. Now, something that's helped me, let's go back up here to the top. I have a Google form. Again, this is also available. I will also link it. It's pretty straightforward and simple, so this is not something that's revolutionary. However, it's a simple scheduling request you can send to teachers for them to input student's name, Cindy. I want her to receive services on Tuesday if possible. I'd like it to be at 1:30 p.m. She's not available at 8:30 to 9 on Wednesdays or Mondays through Fridays for specials. She has lunch at 11. Being able to just plug in that, say, hey, she has speech at 2:30. These are comments that are going to help you. So I like to send this out to teachers. You will find certain teachers are very specific about when they want their kids to miss class, and you will find others that don't care. They're just like, bring them back when you're done with them. I don't really care if you pull them out. So giving them the option to fill out a form like this is helpful because that gives them input. And it's not something you have to remember. I remember my first year, I was walking down the hallways with like a notepad and paper, and I was like, so they're available at this time and this time, trying to remember. It was chicken scratch. This keeps it organized because ultimately you can go through your responses tab and link this to another Google Sheets so that you can see the information and the data in a Google Sheets format to know who is available when. So this can be a helpful resource. Again, if you're having trouble with master schedules or if you need more information in addition to master schedules, getting those quickly is going to be incredibly helpful. Recess times, that's another one that I just thought of. I don't know about you. I'm not brave enough to take a kid off the playground and try to make them work because I don't think it's going to be very productive. So I try to avoid recess times as well. All right. Let's go back to caseload overview. I want to look at some other things. Now we've got these names sorted by school. What else can we sort by? I want to sort by case manager here for a second. Why would I want to sort by case manager? Here we go. We've got Carter, Evans. We got 2 case managers at this elementary school. Looks like everybody at Valley View is Farmer. Maybe. Now there's a few Valley View that are SNPs. So we've got 2 case managers there. Looks like we've got more Seaside with Holt. So there's 3 case managers at Seaside. Evergreen's got Johnson and Lee. Grandview is all Peters. Got Garcia also at Evergreen. So we've got some different caseload manager names. I'm going to sort this column back for schools. Sometimes you have to play around with it a little bit, but yeah, here we go. So now we've got all of our Evergreen kids together, and our case managers are also still together. So we see Garcia, Johnson, and Lee are going to be our case managers at Evergreen, right? Yes. So there are 16 students in all at Evergreen, and we have 3 different case managers. Now, the reason I'm sorting by case manager here, this may not be applicable in every setting, but I do want you to think about where your kids are in the building, okay? This might be sorting by grade. This might be sorting by classroom teacher. This might be sorting by other factors as well. But for the sake of this kind of example, case manager. So if we've got 5 students that are all Garcia, let's say Garcia is like a self-contained resource room, okay? So she has these 5 students. It would be beneficial, it would be in my best interest to see these kids back to back if possible. I think most of us would agree, right? We walk in, we get a student, we take them out, we push them, we go back and forth, and we see as many as we can in that time. Most of us would agree that that is going to be the most beneficial use of our time, right? Then we're going to move on to Johnson's kids. Maybe Johnson is the like K through 3 resource teacher. Then we've got Lee over here, and Lee's got a bunch of different kids. So I don't know. Again, ChatGPT is not perfect, but we can see where students are. And that is going to help us to be as effective as we possibly can be when we're scheduling and when we're seeing these students. Here are 2 things I want you to think about and consider. Number 1, consider starting with your students who are more mainstreamed, students who are more gen ed. The reason I found for this is because there are usually less times that these students are available. They have more resource minutes that resource teachers don't want them to be necessarily pulled out of. They have other things that are going on. They have things that the teacher doesn't want them to miss in class. Usually it's a little bit harder to schedule students that are not in a self-contained room. So that's where I usually like to begin. So let's say that's Lee and Johnson. We're looking at Lee and Johnson to see who is available when. Now I want to break it down to frequency and duration, okay? We've got a once-a-month consult student. I'm not worried about him, okay? Leo is fine. We've got twice a month for 20 minutes, once a week for 20 minutes, twice a month for 20 minutes, once a week. Ooh, we've got 3 twice-a-weekers right here in a row. Emily, Jackson, and James. They're all twice a week. So once we have our, we've broken it down by caseload, case manager. Now I want to look at these specific frequencies. If we have a student who is being seen twice a week, they are going to take up more time in my schedule than other students. So I want to make it a priority to schedule Emily, Jackson, and James because they're twice a weekers. So we've got Evergreen Elementary, Jackson and James, and Emily are twice a week. Let's go back to our schedule. Evergreen, Monday, Wednesday. So if we're only going to be at Evergreen on Monday and Wednesday, then we want to make sure that we can see Emily, Jackson, and James twice a week, right, on Monday and Wednesday. So we want to give them times. So my first plan of action will be to be sending a scheduling request form to those teachers to get input about data for when they are available. I would love to see them back to back because I think that would be really helpful if they're all in the same kind of case manager zone. But let's say I contacted the case manager and she said the only time they're going to be available is from 12:30 on in the afternoon. All right. So we're going to see Emily, we're going to see Jackson, and then we're going to see James. And we're going to see them at the same time on Wednesdays. Emily, Jackson, and James. Now look, really quickly, I want to show you something. I said I was going to split my time on Wednesdays between Evergreen, I didn't spell that right, Evergreen and Seaside. The way I looked at it is I said I was going to go to Evergreen in the morning. But look what we've got. We've got Evergreen students in the afternoon. So I may have to switch this up and go to Seaside in the mornings and then Evergreen in the afternoons based on availability, right? Because they're only available in the afternoon. So I have to be flexible and change my original plan based on what I'm seeing. All right, so we've got our twice a weekers in. That time works for them, and that's going to be beneficial and good. So we've got our twice a weekers. Now we have two options. We can either continue on with Evergreen, try to get that schedule finalized, and we can look at our once a weekers and kind of trickle down from once a weekers, or I would recommend going through and getting all of those twice a weekers. So your high frequency kiddos, that's where we want to begin. Because look, I don't know why this would be the case. Thank ChatGPT. We have 3 high school students, Sebastian, Grace, and Zara, who are twice a week, and they're at the high school. You remember, I only gave 1 day a week at the high school. I said, they're high school. I don't need that time. Now, this may not be a realistic scenario. I'm hoping that you don't have high schoolers that are getting therapy twice a week. But if you do, this is a surprise, right? Maybe you inherited this caseload and you're thinking, what on earth is going on? That's okay. I want you to problem solve here. Okay, so we've got twice a weekers. We've got to see these kids. We can't just see them on Fridays because we've got 3 kids at the high school that need to be seen twice a week. So my initial thought here, problem solving in my brain for this specific thing is like, okay, when else can we see these high school students? We want to get them on the schedule. I want to make sure I can see them twice a week. I talked to their case manager. She says it's relatively open. They're available anytime. Sebastian, Grace, and Zara. So let's say Sebastian, Grace, Zara. Okay, I've got them on my Friday mornings. We'll just start out at 8 and go to 9:30. I need another morning when I'm available and I can see Sebastian, Grace, and Zara. It looks like I want to look at Seaside and see what I've got available, okay? Because I could potentially go to the high school first and see those 3 if needed. But I want to make sure I don't have any twice a week kids at Seaside that would interfere with this plan of mine. So I'm going to go back to my caseload overview. I'm going to scroll. We're going to go down to Seaside. We're going to look and see what we've got. Scroll through here. Oh, twice a week, twice a week. So it looks like we've got Hannah and Olivia are twice a week. And then we've got Maya is also twice a week. Is that our only 3 that are twice a week? I believe so. But we do have 3 that are twice a week. So we want to make sure, again, we're not overlapping. So I have room. If I wanted to see these kids, I'm probably going to need travel time input here. I could input Hannah, Olivia, and was it Maya? I think it was Maya here if they're available, right? So this is the process. I'm not going to take you through putting every kid on this schedule because that's not the best use of your time or mine. But I do want to show you the thought process here. We're starting with the high frequency students because they're the most difficult to schedule, right? They take up a lot of my schedule to get them here. I've got, for whatever reason, with this crew, I've got a lot of twice a weekers. So I'm going to need to be flexible with where I'm at, when I'm at, all these different things, inputting and plugging in time, right? So I want to confirm all those twice a weekers before I move on to my lower frequency kiddos. Let's look at the middle school just for kicks and giggles and see what we've got. It looks like we don't have any twice a weekers at the middle school, so Thursdays should be fine for them. So that's my thought process here. Then we're going to work our way down with our once a weekers, and we're going to plug them in around these students. Once we've got all of our twice a weekers input in, let's Sebastian, Grace, Zara. Look, we've got a really busy Wednesday morning. Everybody on Wednesday morning is plugged in. We don't have any extra time on Wednesday mornings. So that means we need to see all of our Seaside students, the other Seaside students on Tuesdays. It's a give and take, an ebb and flow of our time. And it is problem solving to some degree, because what I'm going to run into is, let's say Hannah's teacher says she's not available at 10 a.m. She's not available from 10 to lunch. When are we going to see her? She's twice a week. She's not available during this time. What are we going to do? We have to problem solve. Okay. We have to go back to the drawing board. We might have to rearrange days. It is crazy. But when we start with those high frequency kids and we trickle down to the low frequency kids, we're going to be able to effectively put times on our schedule that work. Once we've got our twice a week kids and our once a week kids scheduled, then we can move on to our what we would call monthly students. So kids that are 3 times a month, twice a month, once a month, consult, that sort of thing. Okay. So we have some options here. I like personally to put my consult kids on the calendar. Not everybody likes to do that. I like to put my consult kids on the calendar because I find personally putting consult kids on the calendar helps me to remember this is my time to provide consultation services. Consultation services, if you're not familiar, is any time that you're working with a teacher or another member of the team or the whole team to provide supports on behalf of the student, but you're not necessarily working directly with the student. So for example, we've got Charlotte, who's on consult at Seaside Elementary. So once a month, I'm supposed to be checking in to provide supports for her. What I don't need to do is 2 things. I don't need to leave her off my schedule because I'll forget her, but I don't need to give her a time. She's at Seaside. I don't want to say at 8 a.m. every week is Charlotte's time, right? Because she's only a once a month consult student. I'm only consulting once a month. I don't need to give her every single week because that's going to waste time that I have. So something that I like to do for students that are twice a month, maybe once a month consults, specifically with this schedule, let's sort this column from A to Z so we can see who's available when. I've got, looks like 11 monthly consult students at all the different schools. Let's go down to twice a month. Got quite a few twice a month students. Why don't I pair those? When you look at the school calendar, not every month is going to have 4 weeks, but pretty much every month you're going to have at least 3 weeks, which is going to give you time to see that student that's twice a month. And then on the off week, I'm going to consult with a student. So, for example, we've got Daniel at Evergreen Elementary. He's a once a month consult. We've got Isabella at Evergreen Elementary, who's a once a month consult, or twice a month direct. So let's go back to our schedule. We had Isabella twice a month, Daniel once a month. Let's say at 9 o'clock, Isabella / Daniel. And I like to color code these. I found that helps my brain a little bit. Some of you guys that may not help. But for example, if I've got weekly kids or twice a week kids, I like to make them green. I like to make my twice a month kids blue, and I like to make my consults red. I don't know. You can do whatever colors you want. But look, so now I've got this on here. I know that every other Monday at 9 a.m. I'm going to see Isabella. But on my off week, I'm going to check in on Daniel during that time. So that helps me maximize my time, right? I'm not just sitting around on the off weeks that I'm not seeing Isabella. But I'm also putting Daniel on my calendar for a specific time. So this is going to help maximize my minutes. Okay. So that's another little hack that I like to do with my students as well. Like I said, some months have 4 weeks, some weeks have five, some months have 5 weeks. So I just don't like to take a risk by putting like a 3 times a month, or let's say Zoe with Daniel instead, because she's 3 times a month. Well, I might only have a month that has 3 weeks, and I don't have time to check in on Daniel because I had to see Zoe all 3 weeks that month. So I like to be careful with that, but it is a helpful strategy, especially when you have a lot of students, and especially when you have a lot of consult students. You're trying to figure out where to plug them in. Consult students are usually last. They're usually easiest to plug in last because you're only checking in on them once a month. But if you can pair them with students who have monthly minutes, that also helps. All right. 2 more tips and we will be all done. All right. My next tip is going to be another way to maximize your time, and that is going to involve grouping students who have similar goals. Now, I don't have access to goals for any of these students, right? That's not a part of this caseload overview. But I can go through my caseload when I make this caseload overview and take some notes about goals. Let's say that we've got, give another example, Liam and Ethan are both in the 4th grade, okay? And they both have Holt as their case manager. And they both have once a week minutes for 20 minutes. Wow, that couldn't have lined up any better. These 2 students, I want to check in and see if they have similar goals, okay? I check in online, and it turns out both of these students have a goal that we're going to write 2 to 3 sentences with good line adherence, good spacing, good sizing, all of that. So we're working on legibility within the context of writing. That sounds like something we can work on in a group, right? Now, I understand some schools, some districts don't like for you to group students. Some like you to see every student individually. Before you do this, I want you to check in and make sure that this is good. But I found groups are good for a lot of reasons. They're good for socialization. They're good for carryover of skills. Some students kind of like to show out when it's just you and them, but when they're with a peer, they're going to act better. Some it's the opposite. I understand that completely. But let's group Liam and Ethan at the same time because they are at the same school. They're in the same grade. They have the same goals, and they have the same case manager and the same time. So let's go back to Seaside. Let's say first thing in the mornings, I'm going to go see Liam, not slash, because that's or, Liam and Ethan, and that's going to be my group. Okay. So go through and group students who have similar goals. Another thing that I've done is if I've got students who have twice a week minutes, sometimes I like to see them on one session by themselves and then on one session in a group. And that also helps with carryover of skills. Free tip. Last thing I want to look at. Another selfish thing for scheduling as you are working through your times. I understand sometimes this isn't going to work out, but I want you to consider as you're going, filling the middle of your day as much as you possibly can, aside from giving yourself a lunchtime. Filling your middle of the day with weekly kids, with twice a week kids, with kids that are seen, on a regular basis. And try to put your fringe students, your monthly students, your consult students on the beginning or on the end of your day, because this will help kind of organize your brain. This is something that I have found to be better. When I'm bouncing back and forth between monthly and weekly kids all day long, it can be hard to keep things in mind. So I like to bookend my days, right? Let's say I've gotten all of my pairs of twice a month versus consult put in, and I still have like 5 or 6 consult kids. Well, let's put in consults at, 2:30, the 2 to 2:30 slot every day, right? And then we'll put in documentation time, So what that's going to do is that's going to help you kind of ease out of your day, right? You've seen all these direct kids, you've got all your direct time. Last thing before you do your documentation, I need to run down to Miss So-and-so and I need to check on Daniel. So that's something that, like I said, I know that's wishful thinking from time to time, but if you can start filling up your day in the middle of your day, start, and work your way out, then once you're at the fringes of your day, which I like to call the beginning, early morning, late afternoon, you can hopefully, in theory, fill that time with students who have less frequency of minutes. And that's going to help you kind of ease out of your day, right? It's going to help you have time. Let's say, you have an evaluation that's due. Well, my 2 to 2:30 slot is Daniel, and he's only once a month consult, right? So on the week that I'm not consulting with Daniel, I can do an evaluation from 2 to 3 because I may not need that documentation time. I can plug somebody in there to test. That's going to be helpful for you to have that extra time and try to do it in blocks so that you can have those extra time for meetings, for writing reports, for evaluating, for doing all of the indirect things that you still do. Put those on your calendar because those are part of your job just as much as anything else. And that's all I have to say about the caseload versus workload model. I do think it's very important. So, all in all, excuse me, all in all, here are my scheduling tips for school-based therapists. I hope that this has been helpful for you. Again, if these specific resources I've been showing are something that you find might be helpful for you, I will link them below. Feel free to access them. If you think they're going to make your life easier, feel free to make your own. I hope that this video has been extremely helpful for you in the process of generating a schedule, and I hope you have a wonderful school year. Best of luck.